That question hit me right in the middle of the HOA community Thanksgiving potluck, landing like a hammer to the back of my neck. The president, Karen Thompson, gushed over her son Grant's perfectly manicured lawn and flawless compliance with every single covenant, then turned her disappointed gaze on me, asking when I would finally contribute to the community by volunteering for the board. Little did she know, I had uncovered the ugly truth about her son's mortgage exactly 2 weeks ago. I did not just clap back that night. I flipped the entire chessboard, saving the most devastating secret for the very last second. My name is Piper Richardson, and for the first 18 months of my life in Willow Creek, HOA, Colorado, I existed largely as a ghost in this manicured kingdom. If you walked through the pristine, rule-enforced streets and asked the neighbors about the residents, they would immediately tell you about Karen, the tragic widow who held her head high as HOA president, and Grant, her golden boy who was destined for greatness in the community. If you pressed them about the new resident like me, they might pause, squinting against the suburban sun, and say, "Oh, right, the quiet one. She keeps to herself, doesn't she? Always getting those petty fines." That was Willow Creek. It was a neighborhood where everyone knew your business because the HOA made sure of it. 300 pages of covenants dictating everything from the exact shade of beige your mailbox could be to the precise height your grass could grow. Yet somehow, nobody knew me at all. I had moved here after a brutal job transfer, thinking the quiet cul-de-sacs and protected woodlands would finally give me the peace I craved. My father had died when I was 6, and the heir never really came back to our old house. Karen didn't just grieve for the community. She rebuilt herself around a single structural pillar. Her son Grant, the oldest male, the heir apparent to the HOA throne that didn't really exist but felt like it did. He was 5 years older than me in neighborhood seniority, always ahead, always the priority, always the sun around which this fractured little solar system revolved. I was just a satellite drifting in the cold outer rings. The dynamic was established early. If Grant's lawn had a single brown patch, it was a community emergency requiring an emergency board meeting. If my trash can sat out 15 minutes past the allowed window, I got a certified letter and a $250 fine. By the time I had lived here 10 months, I had learned the most important lesson of HOA life. Do not need anything. Needs were inconvenient. Needs took attention away from Grant, and taking attention away from Grant was the cardinal sin of the Willow Creek Kingdom. I remember the first HOA holiday decorating contest. It might sound trivial now, but back then it felt like the most important event in the neighborhood. I had studied the covenants for weeks, making sure every string of lights was exactly the permitted warm white temperature and hung at the precise angle. I had placed first in the preliminary vote among the newer residents. I remember standing at the community center, clutching my entry form, waiting for Karen to stop praising Grant's innovative inflatable turkey display so I could ask her to sign off on my final approval. "Karen," I had said, tugging on her sleeve, "the decorating contest judging is next Tuesday at 6. You said you'd come review my setup." She had looked at me, her eyes distracted, already scanning the covenant binder on the table. "Tuesday, Piper." "Honey, I can't. That's the night Grant has his special landscaping consultation. He's struggling with the edging and I need to be here to make sure he actually focuses." "But the rules say any board member can." I started before remembering that arguing with Karen was pointless. The silence that followed was heavy. "I can't drive over there myself," she had said, her voice taking on that familiar edge of martyrdom. "Ask Mrs. Gable down the street. She's going, isn't she?" So I drove to the judging in the back of Mrs. Gable's station wagon, surrounded by the smell of stale cigarette smoke and wet dog. I won second place. When I came home clutching my red ribbon, Karen was in the common area, helping Grant adjust his inflatable display because he had tripped over a stake. She glanced at the ribbon, gave me a tired smile, and said, That's nice. Sweetie. Now be a dear and fetch your neighbor some more steaks. He's in so much pain. That was the pattern. It repeated itself 1,000 times over the next year. The HOA meetings where I scanned the crowd for a friendly face only to find an empty chair next to Karen. The annual awards ceremonies where other residents cheered and snapped photos while I stood on the stage to polite, indifferent applause. The violation hearings she skipped because Grant had a cold, or Grant had a heartache, or Grant simply needed her to sit on the porch and watch him mow because he was feeling overwhelmed by the pressures of being an average HOA prince. There was only one person who ever really saw me. My cousin Callie, another resident 2 streets over. Callie was 3 years older than me in neighborhood time, sharp-tongued and observant in a way that made Karen uncomfortable. She lived in the older section but showed up for me in ways the board never did. I remember the day of my 1-year anniversary potluck. I had finally gotten my yard to perfect compliance after weeks of measuring. I was standing in my driveway, sweating, my stomach in knots. I looked for Karen in the crowd. She was there, but she was on her phone, her back half turned to my display. Later, I found out Grant had called her because he couldn't find his favorite edger for the photo shoot. He was definitely going to be late for. Callie found me afterward holding a bouquet of wildflowers she had clearly picked from the edge of the community trail. She grabbed my shoulders, looking me dead in the eye. "You are the smartest person in this whole damn neighborhood, Piper," she had said, her voice fierce. "You are better than you think. Do not let them make you feel small just because they are too blind to see you." "Thanks, Cal," I had whispered, trying not to cry. "But Karen says..." "Forget what Karen says," Callie had interrupted. "Karen thinks the sun rises and sets on Grant's backside. You are going to get out from under these fines, Piper. You are going to be something." I held on to those words like a lifeline because inside the community newsletter, the narrative was very different. There was a wall in the HOA office right next to the bulletin board that Karen called the Wall of Excellence. It was a shrine to Grant. There was Grant in his Pee-wee baseball uniform, grinning with a missing tooth. Grant holding up the trophy for Best Kept Lawn. Grant in his prom tuxedo for the neighborhood gala, looking handsome and smug. And then there were the resident photos. If you looked closely, you could find me. I was the blur in the corner. I was the elbow sticking out of the frame. One afternoon, when I had lived here 16 months, I made the mistake of asking Karen why there were not any solo pictures of newer residents like me on the wall. She was folding the latest violation notices, snapping Grant's compliance certificates into crisp rectangles. "Oh, Piper, don't be sensitive," she had said, not looking up. "You know how expensive prints are. Besides, Grant is the future of this community. We have to build him up." "I live here too," I had said quietly. She stopped folding and looked at me with a pitying expression that made my skin crawl. "Honey, you know how it is. New residents, well, they come and go. You'll get married or move or have your own life. A son like Grant is a son until he takes a wife, but a new resident is a new resident for all her life." She frowned, confusing her own HOA logic. "The point is, long-time members stay. They are the support. Grant is going to take care of this board when I'm old. It is just natural to invest in him." Invest. That was the word she used. As if community membership was a financial portfolio and I was a bad stock. So I stopped asking. I stopped trying to jump into the frame. Instead, I focused on becoming undeniable. I threw myself into my remote data security job with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. I was not just competent. I was relentless. I woke up at 4 in the morning to review code before the first violation notice could arrive. I stayed late optimizing firewalls until the HOA patrol cars cruised by. I devoured security manuals because they made sense. In the world of data, logic ruled. Input equaled output. There was no favoritism in code. If you wrote it right, it worked. If you wrote it wrong, failed. It was fair. I picked up extra consulting gigs, wiping digital grease off legacy systems and serving up clean encryption to clients just to save every penny. I babysat for neighbors who actually paid attention to their kids instead of the covenants. I saved every single dollar in a hollowed-out HOA rulebook under my bed. When I got promoted to lead project manager with a substantial raise and stock options, I thought, finally, Karen would be proud. I brought the offer letter to the next board meeting and laid it on the table. It was a thick envelope, the kind that promised a future. Karen read it while stirring her community punch. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Well," she said, "that is lucky. It is not luck." "Karen," I said, my voice tight, "I worked for this. I have a spotless record." "You are lucky you have a brain that works that way," she corrected, tasting the punch. "Grant is more of a people person. He has different gifts. But good for you, Piper. Just do not expect the board to waive any of your pending fines. You know, things are tight right now with Grant between consulting gigs." Grant was 23 and had quit 3 jobs in 6 months because he felt his bosses did not respect his vision. But somehow the HOA fee waivers were always there for him, for his car repairs, for his new professional clothes, for his investments that never paid off. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt something snap inside me. It was not a loud crack. It was a quiet final severing. I realized then that no matter what I did, no matter how high I climbed, I would never be enough to tip the scales. The game was rigged. I took the letter back and slid it into my folder. "I do not expect the board to waive anything," I said. "I never have." She did not even hear the steel in my voice. She just nodded, relieved, and asked if I could run to the store to buy Grant his favorite brand of energy drink before he got home. I went to the store. I bought the drink. I placed it in the community fridge. And then I went to my house, packed a mental bag, and stared at the wall where my face should have been. I made a vow that night, sitting on the floor of my perfectly compliant living room with the door locked. I would excel at my job. I would build a life so solid, so impenetrable that I would never ever have to ask the board for a single waiver. I would live a life that did not require their permission, their fines, or their acknowledgement. I would be successful not to show them up, but to leave their nonsense behind. Grant could have the wall of excellence. He could have the frames. He could have the investment. I was going to have my freedom. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to the sound of the HOA patrol car cruising past, the canned laughter of a neighborhood sitcom mixing with Karen and Grant's voices, I did not know that staying would be the easy part. The hard part would be realizing that even when you are fully compliant, the invisible strings of HOA debt can still be pulled, dragging you back into the suffocating orbit of the people who were supposed to protect the community. I did not know then that the house Grant would eventually buy in the same HOA, the one that sparked the beginning of the end, would be built on a foundation of lies that I was unknowingly paying for. All I knew then was that I was staying. I closed my eyes and imagined a world where I was not blurry. A world where I stood in the center of the frame, sharp and clear and alone. It was a beautiful dream, and like all dreams in Willow Creek, it was about to be tested by the harsh, cold light of HOA reality. I just had to wait for the morning. Moving into Willow Creek felt less like a liberation and more like a tactical retreat into a war zone where the enemy was simple, brutal HOA economics. My promotion covered the mortgage and fees, but it did not account for the sheer cost of existing under constant scrutiny. The welcome packet had glossy photos of smiling residents at block parties, but it failed to mention that violation fines in Willow Creek climbed faster than property values. I had exactly $200 in discretionary cash when I closed on my house. That was my life savings after the down payment. I had tried to talk to Karen about a temporary fee waiver a week before closing. I had sat her down at the community center, armed with a spreadsheet showing the projected cost of compliance versus my finances. Karen had barely glanced at the paper. She was too busy aggressively taping up a box of welcome gifts for Grant. Grant had decided to move into a luxury model in the newer section with a friend who was definitely going to start a revolutionary landscaping business any day now. Grant needed tools. Grant needed waivers. Grant needed a deposit. I just can't. Piper, she had said, ripping the packing tape with her teeth. Grant is finally settling down. He is really trying this time. He needs a stable environment. You know how sensitive he is to his surroundings. If he doesn't feel comfortable, he can't create. I just closed on a house here, I had replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I just need help with the first month's compliance fees. Just one time. I will pay you back. I don't have it, she snapped, shoving a garden gnome into the box. I just waived 3 fees for his new patio. You are smart, Piper. You always figure it out. Grant needs a little more runway, so I figured it out. I did not ask for waivers. I found a way to mow at exactly 3 inches, paint my trim the exact permitted beige, and keep my trash cans hidden. I structured my life with the rigidity of a military operation. Work ran from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. I clocked in at my home office, hauling data until 10 at night. Then I would literally run to save gas to the 24-hour gym 3 blocks away. I worked security protocols from 11 at night until 3 in the morning, cleaning up digital messes and checking in insomniac clients. I slept in 4-hour bursts. My diet consisted of the mistakes from my own kitchen: burnt toast, overcooked eggs, fries that had gone cold, and instant noodles. I lost 10 pounds in my first 6 months. I looked in the mirror and saw sharp angles where my cheeks used to be, but I also saw a promotion that hovered at perfect compliance and a credit score that stayed flawless. I was surviving, just barely. I was walking a tightrope over a canyon, and I told myself that as long as the wind of fines didn't blow, I would make it to the other side. Then, in November, the wind blew. Started as a scratch in my throat, the kind you ignore because you do not have time to acknowledge it. Within 48 hours, it had exploded into a fever that made my bones ache. I tried to work through it. I showed up at my desk, sweating through my hoodie, my hands shaking so badly I dropped a virtual server on a client's lap. My manager sent me home and told me not to log in until I was not a liability. I lost 3 shifts worth of billable hours. Then I slept through my alarm for the gym gig because my body simply shut down, and the HOA patrol, who believed sickness was a sign of weakness, issued me a warning citation for unsightly yard neglect during my illness. I lay in my house, shivering under 3 blankets, doing mental math in a fever haze. I added up the lost wages. I subtracted the cost of the medicine I had been forced to buy. I looked at the compliance fee due date, which was looming like a guillotine. I was short. The number was burned into my brain. $300. It was not a fortune. To the residents driving leased SUVs, it was a weekend barbecue. To Grant, it was a new set of patio lights. To me, it was the difference between keeping my house compliant and facing a lien. I waited until the fever broke, leaving me weak and hollowed out. I sat on the edge of my mattress, staring at my phone. I had promised myself I would not do this. I had sworn I would be the one who never needed anything. But pride does not keep your grass at 3 inches, and dignity does not pay the fine. I dialed Karen's number. My heart was hammering against my ribs harder than it had during the fever. She answered on the second ring, sounding cheerful. "Hello. Hey, Karen," I said, my voice raspy. "Piper, I was just telling the board about Grant. You will not believe it. He is thinking about getting into real estate photography. He has such an eye for angles. That is great, Karen. I said, gripping the phone tight. Listen, I need to ask you something. It is important. She went quiet. The shift in her tone was immediate, a defensive wall slamming down. What is it? I have been sick, I said, rushing the words out before I could lose my nerve. I had the flu or something like it. I missed work. I'm short on the compliance fee for this month. I just need $300. I will pay you back next month. I swear. I just need to bridge the gap. There was a silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the HOA radio playing in the background. A community announcement host shouting about prize drawings. Oh, Piper. She sighed, the sound heavy with exasperation. You know I would if I could. It is $300. Karen, I pleaded. Please. I am going to get another fine stacked on top. I literally just sent a transfer to Grant this morning, she said, her voice rising in that frantic way it did whenever she defended him. His lawn mower broke down. The transmission. He can't keep the yard perfect without it. Piper, it was an emergency. I am sick, I whispered. I am talking about keeping my house from a lien. Well, surely you have options, she said dismissively. What about your cousin Callie? Can't you ask one of the neighbors? Just tell them you are good for it or pick up extra shifts next week. You are so resourceful. You always land on your feet. I am asking you, I said, feeling tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from a hot, searing rage. I am asking the president, and I am telling you the money is gone, she snapped. Do not try to make me feel guilty, Piper. I am doing the best I can with two community members who both seem to need everything from me. The line went dead. She had hung up. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence of my compliant house. The furnace kicked on with a rattle and a hum. Two community members who both seemed to need everything. The audacity of the statement took my breath away. I had asked for $300 to save my compliance. Grant had likely asked for $3,000 to fix a mower on a lawn. He probably did not even maintain himself. I stood up. My legs were shaky, but my mind was suddenly crystal clear. The fever had burned away the last remnants of my neighborhood hope. I realized then that there was no safety net. There was no bored cavalry coming over the hill. I was alone. I looked around my room. I didn't have much. My furniture was second-hand finds. My laptop was issued by work. I had nothing of value except one thing. I went to my closet and pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a gold necklace. It was a delicate chain with a small heart-shaped locket. My father had given it to me for my 5th birthday, a year before he died. It was the only tangible thing I had left of him. I had never worn it because I was terrified of losing it. I kept it safe, a promise that someone had once loved me just for being me. I held it in my hand. The gold felt cold. I put on my coat and walked 20 minutes to a pawn shop on the edge of town, a place with bars on the windows and a sign that said, "We buy gold," in neon letters that flickered ominously. The man behind the counter had grease under his fingernails and looked at me like I was just another rule breaker looking for a fix. He took the necklace, weighed it, and squinted at the hallmark through a loop. "It is 18 karat, I said, my voice flat. "It is vintage scrap value," he grunted. 150. "It is worth more than that," I argued, though I had no fight left in me. "It was my father's," he shrugged. "I am not buying the story, kid. I am buying the metal. Take it or leave it." I took the necklace back. I walked to 2 other shops. The highest offer I got was $200. I took it. I sold my father's necklace to a stranger who threw it into a drawer without a second glance. I made up the last $100 by selling some old textbooks and photocopying the chapters one needed from the library's reserve copies for the rest of the quarter. I paid the compliance fee on time. That night, lying in the dark, minus the one object that proved I had a father, I made a new vow. It was not a wish or a dream. It was a contract I signed with myself in blood and bile. I would never ask the board for anything again. Not a dime. Not a waiver. Not a kind word. If I got fined, I got fined. If I got cited, I got cited. I would rather eat the fines than dial Karen Thompson's number and beg. I would build a fortress of financial independence so high and so thick that no one could ever look down on me again. I would hoard my resources. I would work until my fingers bled, and I would never ever owe the HOA an explanation. The discipline started the next morning. I picked up a third consulting gig on the weekends grading security protocols for a professor client. I cut my food budget by another 10%. I stopped going to community events completely. I became a machine. Input, output, work, save. A week later, package arrived at my door. It was addressed to me. In handwriting I recognized immediately. It was not from Karen. I opened the box. Inside were non-perishable groceries, high-quality protein bars, dried fruit, bags of good coffee, and a large bottle of multivitamins. Tucked into the side was a generic Visa gift card with $200 loaded onto it. There was no note. There didn't need to be. I pulled out my phone and texted Callie. "You didn't have to do this." Her reply came 3 seconds later. "I won a raffle at work. Hate protein bars. You take them. Also heard you had the flu. Drink water. Idiot." I stared at the screen, and for the first time in weeks, the tightness in my chest loosened just a fraction. Callie knew. She always knew. She knew I would not accept charity, so she framed it as luck. She knew I would not take cash from her pocket, so she sent a gift card and pretended it was a prize she didn't want. She was the only one who understood the architecture of my pride. She helped me without making me feel small. I used the gift card to buy back my textbooks. I ate the protein bars and I kept working. The necklace was gone. My old life was gone. But something else had taken its place. I was no longer just the quiet resident who got left out of the photos. I was forged steel. I was a weapon being sharpened on the grindstone of HOA fines, preparing for a war the board did not even know was coming. Karen thought she was helping Grant settle down. She didn't realize she was teaching me exactly how to survive without her. And that lesson was worth far more than $300. It was priceless. Changing my life did not happen like it does in the movies. There was no montage set to upbeat music. No sudden makeover where I took off my glasses and became a superstar. It was quiet. It was boring. It was the result of 1,000 small, unglamorous choices made in the dead of night when everyone else was sleeping. I earned my next promotion with honors, not because I was a genius, but because I treated security audits like a contact sport. While my colleagues were planning holiday road trips, I was already interviewing for bigger contracts. I landed a lead position at North Rail Data Works, a mid-sized tech firm that handled back-end logistics and data processing for major transport companies. It was not a sexy job. We were not building the next social media app or disrupting the rideshare industry. We were the plumbers of the digital world. We made sure that when a train left a depot in Chicago, the data regarding its cargo arrived in Seattle at the exact same time. It was unglamorous work, which meant it was stable and, more importantly, it was complex. I started as a systems analyst. My home office was in a windowless corner, and my first big paycheck felt like a winning lottery ticket, even though by industry standards it was modest. But to a woman who had once sold her dead father's necklace to pay an HOA fine, it was everything. I quickly developed a reputation at North Rail. I became the person you went to when you had a garbage task. If there was a legacy database written in code from the 90s that needed to be migrated without crashing the live environment, they gave it to Piper. If there was a discrepancy in the logs that no one could find after 3 days of searching, they dropped the file on my desk. I did not complain. I did not ask for help. I just put on my noise-canceling headphones, brewed a pot of black tea, and dug in. I treated the code the way I wished the board had treated me, with attention. Cleaned it. I streamlined it. I didn't just fix the bugs. I optimized the architecture so the bugs wouldn't come back. I spent my weekends learning Python and SQL variations that were not even in my job description just so I could understand the full ecosystem of our platform. My manager, a gruff woman named Sarah, who had survived the dot-com burst, noticed. "You don't talk much, Richardson," she told me during my first annual review. "But your code is cleaner than a hospital operating room. I am moving you to data security." That was the first jump. Security was where the real pressure lived. It was also where the real value was. I began working on encryption protocols, firewall stress tests, and vulnerability assessments. I learned to think like a thief so I could lock the doors better. By the time I was 26, I was a project manager. I wasn't the loud, charismatic leader who gave rallying speeches. I was the leader who had a spreadsheet for every contingency. My team liked me because I didn't waste their time. I protected them from upper management's bad ideas, and in return, they delivered excellence. While my career was climbing, my personal life was a masterclass in minimalism. I lived in my small but perfectly compliant house that cost half of what I could afford. I drove a used Honda that I paid for in cash. I wore a uniform of simple blazers and dark jeans. I paid off every pending fine in 22 months. I remember the day I made the final payment. I sat at my kitchen counter staring at the balance zero on my screen. I didn't pop champagne. I just exhaled. A long, slow breath that felt like letting go of a 10-pound weight I had been carrying since I moved in. Then I started accumulating. I maxed out my 401k. I built an emergency fund that could cover 6 months of living expenses. Then 12 months. I was building a fortress. Social media was a trap I avoided. I had a LinkedIn profile that was strictly professional and a neighborhood app account that I checked once a month just to see if anyone had died. I saw Grant's posts. Of course. He was always hustling. He was posting photos of expensive dinners captioned grind set. While I knew for a fact he was asking Karen for gas money, he posted about his entrepreneurial journey, which seemed to consist mostly of buying domains for businesses he never started. I watched from a distance, feeling nothing but a cold, clinical detachment. Then came the North Rail pivot. The company had been quietly building a proprietary predictive algorithm for supply chain logistics. It was boring to the average person, but to global shipping conglomerates, it was gold. We started hearing whispers of a buyout. A lot of employees got nervous. They worried about layoffs. I didn't worry. I looked at my contract when I had been promoted to lead the security integration for the new algorithm. I had negotiated for stock options instead of a higher base salary. At the time, the options were paper money, theoretical value that might never materialize. But I knew the product. I knew how good it was because I had built the walls around it. When the acquisition news broke, it was not a hostile takeover. It was a merger with a massive logistics giant. The valuation of North Rail skyrocketed overnight. I was sitting in my home office when the CEO announced the final share price. I did the math in my head. I checked it twice. Then I checked it a third time. The options I held were no longer paper. They were liquid. They were substantial. I did not quit my job. I did not buy a sports car. I did not book a first-class ticket to anywhere. I went to a real estate agent named Barbara, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who smelled like peppermint tea. "I am looking for a second property," I told her. "Not a starter home. Forever home. I want privacy. I want a yard. And I want it in the quiet part of the reservoir section. Still inside Willow Creek but away from the main patrol routes." We looked at 4 houses. The fourth one was it. It was a craftsman-style house set back from the road, hidden behind a row of mature oak trees. It had a wraparound porch, a wide-open kitchen, and a backyard that backed up to a protected woodland reserve. It was silent. It smelled of pine and damp earth. Felt solid. The price was high. It was the kind of price that would have made the old piper, the girl counting pennies for fines, pass out from shock. I put down a 40% down payment. The bank approved the mortgage in record time. When I signed the papers, my hand didn't shake. Moving day was just me and a moving crew. I didn't have much furniture, so the house felt cavernous at first, but that was the point. I had space. I had room to breathe. The first thing I did was go to the local animal shelter. I walked past the puppies that were jumping and yipping for attention. I stopped at a cage in the back. Inside was a 3-year-old mixed breed, part shepherd, part something scruffy. He had sad, intelligent eyes and a scar on his back leg. He didn't bark. He just watched me. "That is Milo," the volunteer said. "He is a rescue. He had a rough start. He is a bit skittish with loud noises, but he is loyal." "I'll take him," I said. Milo came home with me that afternoon. He explored the backyard, sniffing every tree, then came and sat at my feet on the porch as the sun went down. We sat there together, 2 survivors enjoying the silence. I didn't tell Karen. I didn't tell Grant. I knew exactly what would happen if I did. The narrative would shift. Suddenly, my success would become our success. Karen would brag to the neighbors about how we bought a big house. Grant would start seeing me not as his quiet neighbor, but as a venture capitalist for his bad ideas. There was only one person I wanted to tell. I invited Callie over a week after I settled in. I sent her the address, but didn't tell her what it was. When she pulled into the driveway in her battered sedan, she got out slowly, looking up at the house with wide eyes. I was waiting on the porch, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Milo was sitting next to me. Callie walked up the steps, looking from the house to me and back again. "Okay," she said. Her voice hushed. "Who did you kill?" I laughed. It was a real laugh. Loose and easy. "Nobody. I just worked." "Cal." "I worked really hard." "This is yours?" she asked, sweeping her hand toward the oak front door. "Like, you own this? You are not house-sitting for a rich client." "It is mine," I said. "My name is on the deed. Nobody else's." Callie's eyes filled with tears. She didn't hug me immediately. She walked over to one of the porch pillars and slapped it with her palm, testing its solidity. Then she turned around and grabbed me in a hug that knocked the wind out of me. "I knew it," she whispered into my hair. I told you we were going to be something." "You did," I said, hugging her back. We sat on the porch for hours, drinking coffee while Milo chased squirrels in the yard. I told her about the merger, the stock options, the years of eating ramen so I could get to this point. "Does Karen know?" Callie asked eventually, the question hanging in the air like a storm cloud. "No," I said, "and she is not going to know. Not about the size of this place. Not about the money. To them, I am just doing okay. I have a steady job. That is all they need to know." Callie nodded slowly. "Smart. You know Grant is between opportunities again, right? Karen is paying his fees." "I figured," I said, looking out at my trees. "That is why this place has a gate. They would drain you dry." "Piper," Callie said, her voice serious. "If they knew you had this, Grant would be moving into your guest room by Friday. Karen would be redecorating your kitchen." "I know," I replied. "That is why this isn't just a house. Cal. It is a vault, and I am the only one with the combination." I looked at my cousin, the only community member who had ever brought me flowers instead of fines. "But you," I said, "you are always welcome here. You have a key whenever you want it." Callie smiled, crooked, genuine smile. "I might take you up on that. My apartment has thin walls, and my neighbor is learning the trumpet." That evening, As the sun dipped below the treeline, casting long shadows across my lawn, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had done it. I had broken the cycle. I had built a life that was impervious to the chaos of Willow Creek. I had a job where I was respected for my mind. I had a home that was a sanctuary. I had a dog who loved me without condition. And I had a bank account that meant I never had to be afraid of a $300 fine ever again. I thought I was safe. I thought I had outrun them. But I had underestimated the gravitational pull of a black hole. Just because I had escaped their orbit didn't mean they had stopped looking for fuel to burn. And while I was building my fortress, Grant was busy lighting a match that would eventually threaten to burn down everything he touched. And he was planning to use my credit history as the kindling. It was quiet here in Willow Creek, but back in the board meetings, the storm was gathering, and I was about to get an invitation to walk right into the eye of it. The notification hit my phone on a Tuesday afternoon while I was deep in a security audit for a freight company in Omaha. My phone usually sat face down during work hours, a silent black slab on my desk, but the buzzing was persistent. It vibrated against the wood grain once, twice, 3 times, a frantic rhythm that usually signaled a server crash or a community emergency. I flipped it over. It was neither. It was the neighborhood group chat, a digital purgatory I had muted years ago but could never quite bring myself to leave. The messages were scrolling so fast they were a blur of exclamation points and emojis. Grant bought a house so proud. My boy is a homeowner. Look at the key. There was a photo attached. It was a selfie of Grant and his girlfriend Paige standing in front of a heavy oak door. Grant was holding up a shiny brass key, his mouth open in a performative roar of victory. Paige was leaning into him, smiling that tight camera-ready smile that never seemed to reach her eyes. Behind them, Karen was visible in the reflection of the glass storm door, looking as if she might faint from sheer ecstasy. I stared at the screen. My internal calculator, the one that never really turned off, immediately started crunching numbers. Grant had been unemployed or consulting, as he called it, for the last 8 months. Before that, he had been a brand ambassador for an energy drink company that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. The housing market in our area was brutal. Interest rates were hovering near 7%. Banks were asking for 20% down payments and credit scores north of 750. Grant's credit score, the last time I had inadvertently seen a piece of his mail 3 years ago, was in the low 500s. The math did not add up. In my line of work, when the numbers do not add up, it means someone is hiding a variable. I typed a generic "congratulations" into the chat, hit send, and then put the phone back down. But the unease lingered, a cold little knot in the pit of my stomach. 2 weeks later, I drove across the neighborhood for the early housewarming. Karen had insisted. She said it was a chance for the community to finally celebrate something big. She said I needed to see what success looked like. The slight was subtle, but it landed. My house with its paid-off mortgage and quiet woods apparently did not count as success because it did not come with a fanfare. Grant's new house was in the newer section of Willow Creek, one of those instant neighborhoods that spring up overnight on flattened farmland. As I turned onto the street, I was struck by the eerie uniformity of it all. Every house was painted a variation of beige or gray. Every lawn was exactly the same shade of chemically enhanced green. The trees were saplings held up by stakes and wires, too thin to cast a shadow. It was beautiful in the way a movie set is beautiful. It looked perfect from the curb, but you got the sense that if you leaned too hard against a wall, it might fall over. I pulled into the driveway behind Karen's aging sedan. Grant's car, a leased luxury SUV that cost more per month than my first apartment, was parked prominently in the center of the garage, the door left open so everyone could see it. Grant met me at the door. He was wearing a blazer over a t-shirt, a look I suspected he thought projected tech billionaire but actually screamed unemployed trying too hard. "Piper!" he shouted. pulling me into a hug that felt more like a wrestling hold. He smelled of expensive cologne and nervous sweat. "Welcome to the estate. Come on in. Take your shoes off. These floors are imported hardwood. Very delicate." I slipped off my boots and stepped onto the gray laminate flooring. It was not imported hardwood. It was vinyl. I could tell by the way it sounded under my socks. A hollow plastic click. "It is nice, Grant," I said, looking around. The living room was massive with vaulted ceilings that echoed. It was furnished with a single oversized leather sectional and a television that was easily 80 inches wide. There were no books, no personal photos, just the smell of fresh paint and off-gassing carpet. "It is an investment," Grant said, puffing out his chest. "Real estate is the only real asset class worth holding right now. I told Paige we need to park our capital somewhere safe. This place, it is going to appreciate 10% by next year. Guaranteed." "Park what capital?" I wanted to ask. Instead I asked, "So how is the consulting business going? You must have landed some big clients to qualify for a place like this." Grant's eyes flickered away from mine for a fraction of a second. "Oh, it is booming. I have a few non-disclosure agreements signed, so I can't talk specifics. Big tech stuff, crypto adjacencies, very high-level crypto adjacencies." It was a word salad that meant absolutely nothing. Karen bustled out of the kitchen then, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. She looked frantic, her face flushed, her movements jerky. She looked like a woman who was running on adrenaline and denial. "Piper, look at this kitchen," she exclaimed, spinning around. "Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. It is a chef's dream. It is beautiful, Karen," I said. "Grant bought it for our future," she said, squeezing Grant's arm. "He said he wants a place big enough for the whole community for holidays. He is such a good provider."
I watched Grant preen under her pris.
He did not look like a provider to me. He looked like a man walking a tightrope without a net. Then Paige appeared. Paige was a woman who treated life like a beauty pageant she was determined to win. She was petite, blonde, and wore a dress that was slightly too formal for a Tuesday afternoon. "Piper," she squealed, coming over to air-kiss my cheek. "I am so glad you could make it. We were just saying it is a shame you are all alone in that big house of yours. It must get so lonely." "I like the quiet," I said, keeping my face neutral. "Oh, sure," Paige said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "But a woman needs stability. Grant has just been a rock. It is so nice to have a man who takes charge. Maybe one day you will find someone who wants to settle down too." The implication was clear. I was the defective one. I was the cautionary tale. Grant, with his leased car and his mysterious income, was the success story. The party, if you could call it that, was a strange affair. It was just me, Karen, Grant, Paige, and a couple of Grant's friends who spent the entire time on the back patio smoking and talking loudly about hustle culture. I wandered through the house, my analyst brain cataloging details. The furniture was rented. I saw the tag still on the underside of the sofa when I dropped a napkin. The refrigerator was empty except for a bottle of champagne, a six-pack of beer, and some takeout containers. There were no groceries, no staples. This wasn't a home. It was a stage. I made my way toward the back of the house, looking for the bathroom. I passed a room that was set up as an office. The door was ajar. Inside, Karen and Grant were standing by a desk. They didn't see me. I stopped, my instincts flaring. "I just don't understand why I need to sign this one too," Karen was saying. Her voice sounded small, tremulous. "I already signed the papers at the bank." "Karen, listen to me," Grant said, his voice low.
Urgent.
Lacking the bravado he had displayed in the living room. "This is just for the insurance. It is a formality. The bank requires a secondary signature for the premium coverage because the market is so volatile. But it says guarantor right here, Karen said. That is just legal jargon, Grant snapped, then softened his tone instantly. It just means you verify I am who I say I am. Come on, Karen. Do you want me to lose the house? The closing is practically done. If you don't sign this, the whole deal falls through. Paige will be devastated. I will look like an idiot. No. I don't want that, Karen said quickly. Of course not. Then just sign. Trust me. I am the one making the money here. Right? I got this. I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. I backed away silently, my heart thumping against my ribs. Guarantor. That was not insurance. That was co-signing. That was taking on liability. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I splashed cold water on my face. I stared at myself in the mirror. Stay out of it, I told myself. You promised. You vowed you would not get involved. But the data was screaming at me. When I came out, the mood in the kitchen had shifted. Karen was laughing too loud. Grant was pouring champagne. Paige was showing Karen fabric swatches for curtains she was planning to order. I walked over to the kitchen island to get a glass of water. A stack of mail had been tossed carelessly next to the fruit bowl. Most of it was junk mail, flyers for pizza, coupons for window cleaning. But one envelope caught my eye. It was sitting at the bottom of the pile, partially covered by a flyer. It was white with a red stamp on the front that said urgent. I glanced around. Grant was busy acting out a story about a business meeting for his friends. Paige and Karen were heads down over the fabric. I used my pinky finger to nudge the flyer aside just an inch. The envelope was from a credit card company. The logo was familiar. It was a card known for high interest rates and predatory lending practices, the kind they market to people with bad credit. The plastic window where the address should be was torn, as if someone had ripped it open in a hurry and then tossed it aside. But I could see the street address. It was this house. And I could see the last name, Richardson. But the first name was ripped off. Could have been Grant Richardson. Could have been Karen Thompson. But as I looked at the jagged tear, a cold chill went down my spine. The font used for the name looked longer than Grant, longer than Karen. I pulled my hand back as Paige looked up. Piper, what do you think? Velvet or linen? She asked, holding up 2 squares of fabric. Linen, I said automatically. Velvet collects dust. Always so practical, Paige laughed, turning back to Karen. See, she has no sense of romance. I left an hour later. I told them I had an early meeting the next morning and had to get back to my section. I could not spend another minute in that house. The air felt thin, like it was being sucked out by a vacuum. Grant walked me to my car. He was tipsy now. His face flushed. You see, Piper, he said, leaning against my driver's side door. I told you I would make it. Big house, hot girl, the American dream. It is a lot of house. Grant, I said carefully. The mortgage must be heavy. Peanuts, he waved a hand. I have cash flow you wouldn't believe. Right? I said. Well, congratulations. I backed out of the driveway, watching him wave in the rearview mirror. He looked small against the backdrop of the oversized vinyl-sided house. A little boy playing dress-up in a world that demanded real currency. I drove in silence for the first hour. My mind was replaying the conversation in the office. Just a formality. Guarantor. Karen didn't have the money to cover a mortgage like that. If Grant defaulted, and given the debt collection letter on the counter, when Grant defaulted, the bank would come for her. They would take her retirement. They would take her small house in the older section. But that wasn't what was making my hands grip the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. It was the envelope, the torn name. Why would Grant tear the name off an unopened bill unless he didn't want anyone to see who it was addressed to? My phone was mounted on the dashboard displaying the GPS map. Suddenly, the music I was streaming cut out. A banner notification dropped down from the top of the screen. It was not a text. It was an alert from my identity protection app, a service I paid $20 a month for, mostly out of professional paranoia. Security alert. New credit inquiry detected. I pulled over onto the shoulder of the neighborhood road. Gravel crunching under my tires. My heart was hammering in my throat. I unlocked the phone and opened the app. The screen loaded. A spinning circle of doom. New hard inquiry. Midwest Regional Mortgage Lenders. Date, today. Status, pending. I stared at the screen. I had not applied for a mortgage. I had not applied for a loan. I had not authorized anyone to check my credit. I scrolled down. There was more. Address associated with inquiry, 1402 Oak Creek Drive. The Willows section. Grant's address. The air in the car suddenly felt freezing. It wasn't just Karen. He hadn't just used Karen. I sat there on the side of the road. SUVs thundering past me, shaking my small car. I looked at the digital readout. Someone had tried to use my name, my social security number, my perfect credit history to secure financing for that house. Grant had dragged Karen into the deep end. And when she wasn't enough to float the loan, he had reached out and tried to grab me too. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt a familiar cold clarity wash over me. The same feeling I had when I looked at a messy line of code and saw exactly where the error was. This was not a mistake. This was a crime. And as I put the car back in gear and merged back onto the road, I knew one thing for certain. The next time I saw Grant and Karen, we wouldn't be eating hors d'oeuvres. We would be at war. I drove the rest of the way home in silence, plotting. If Grant wanted to play games with numbers, he was about to learn that he was playing against a grandmaster. He thought he had bought a house. What he had actually bought was a one-way ticket to his own destruction, and I was going to be the one to punch it. I sat in the dark of my home office, the blue light from 3 27-inch monitors washing over my face, creating a sterile digital cave. Milo was asleep on the rug beside my chair, his rhythmic breathing the only organic sound in a room dominated by the hum of hard drives and the cooling fans of my server tower. It was 2 a.m. I had not slept since I left Grant's house. I had driven across the neighborhood fueled by a singular cold fury that sharpened my focus rather than dulling it. I was not just a resident anymore. I was an analyst, and I was looking at a security breach. I started with the alert that had flashed on my phone on the road. I logged into the secure portal of the credit bureau. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, the loud clicks echoing like gunfire. I pulled the full expanded report. There it was, a hard inquiry from Midwest Regional Mortgage Lenders. It was dated yesterday. The status was denied. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. The silence in my house after I returned from the housewarming was different from the silence I had cultivated for years. Before, the quiet was a sanctuary. Now it felt like the breathless pause between a lightning strike and the inevitable roll of thunder. I knew the storm had not passed. I had merely outrun the first wave for 3 days. My phone lay on the kitchen island like an unexploded ordnance. I went to work. I walked Milo. I wrote code, but a part of me was constantly braced for impact. I knew they would not let me walk away with the last word. People like Karen and Grant do not accept reality. They renegotiate until it fits their delusion. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was chopping vegetables for a stir-fry. The rhythmic thud-thud-thud of the knife against the wooden board serving as a meditation. When the screen lit up with Karen, I did not answer immediately. I let it ring 4 times. I wiped my hands on a towel. I took a deep breath. Then I picked it up. "Hello," I said. There was no greeting. "No, how was your drive back?" "No, I am sorry about the party. They called me Piper." Karen said. Her voice was high and thin, vibrating with a panic she was trying and failing to suppress. The bank called a man named Mr. Henderson. He was very rude. I told you they would call, Karen, I said, leaning against the counter. He said there is an irregularity with the down payment. She rushed on, ignoring me. He said they need to verify the source of funds again and something about the bridge loan I took out. He used words I didn't understand.
Collatéral lien.
It is all a mess. It is not a mess, I said calmly. It is fraud. They are catching up to the math. Well, you need to fix it, she said. I froze. The sheer audacity of the command took the air out of my lungs. Excuse me? You need to fix it, she repeated, firmer this time, as if she were telling a teenager to clean up a spilled glass of milk. You are good at this stuff. You deal with numbers. You deal with contracts. You talk to this Mr. Henderson. Explain to him that Grant is good for it. Tell him about Grant's potential. If you explain it, they will listen. You sound official when you talk. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat. But it was a dark, jagged thing. You want me to commit perjury? You want me to lie to a federal lender to cover up Grant's mess? I want you to help the community, she snapped. Grant is frantic. He is so stressed he can't even eat. He says if this funding gets pulled, he loses the house. He loses the deposit. Piper. That is $60,000. That is my money. I know it is your money, I said. I told you that at the party. Then do something, she cried. You have money. You have that big job. If you just spoke to them, or maybe if you just put up a small guarantee, just until Grant's investments clear. I closed my eyes. The kitchen seemed to spin slowly. Karen, I said, my voice dropping an octave. Do you remember when I was 19? What? She sounded impatient. What does that have to do with anything? I was 19, I continued. I had the flu. I was lying on a mattress in my old place that smelled like mold. I needed $300 to pay a fine so I wouldn't get a lien in the snow. I called you. I begged you. Oh, for heaven's sake, she sighed. Are we really doing this again? I told you. I didn't have it. You had it, I said. You sent it to Grant for a transmission on a mower he didn't drive. You told me to ask the neighbors. You told me to figure it out. You hung up on me. I did my best, she shouted. It was a hard time. Why do you always hold on to these things? You're so unforgiving. I was a single president trying to keep everything afloat. You weren't keeping everything afloat, I said. You were keeping Grant afloat. I was drowning and you watched. And look at you now, she countered triumphantly. You are fine. You are successful. It made you strong. So really, I did you a favor. That was it. That was the sentence that severed the last thread, the revisionist history where her neglect was actually a strategic board decision designed to build my character. I am not helping you, I said. I am not calling the bank. I am not sending a dime. I am not co-signing. So you are just going to let me lose everything? She asked, her voice dropping to a whisper intended to induce maximum guilt. You are going to let your president be destitute. I am not doing this to you, I said. Grant did this to you. You did this to yourself when you signed that paper without reading it. You are cold, she spat. Grant was right. You are jealous and you are cold and you have a stone where your heart should be. I advise you to get a lawyer, Karen, I said. A bankruptcy attorney. You are going to need one. I don't need a lawyer, she screamed. I need my community. You don't have a community, I said. You have a retirement plan you forgot to fund. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying the words I had swallowed for a decade. I did not have time to recover. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged. It was a text from a number I did not recognize. You think you are real smart, don't you? I knew immediately who it was. I had blocked Grant's number before I even left his driveway on Thanksgiving, but I should have known he would find a way. You come into my house and disrespect me. You ruin my reputation with Karen. You are dead to me. You are a bitter, lonely hag. I hope you rot in that house with your mutt. You ruined my happiness. If I lose this house, it is on you. All on you. I read the text twice. It was classic Grant. No accountability, just projection. He was the victim. I was the architect of his demise. He truly believed that by pointing out he had no money, I had somehow caused him to have no money. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot. I added it to the folder on my computer. Evidence, always evidence. Then, an hour later, the phone rang again. It was Paige. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity, that fatal flaw of the analyst, got the better of me. I wanted to see what angle she would play. "Hello, Paige," I said. "Piper." Her voice was breathless, sweet, as if we were best friends chatting about a brunch date. "Hi. I'm so glad you picked up. Listen, I know things got a little heated at the party. Emotions were high. The holidays are so stressful, right?" "It wasn't stress, Paige," I said. "It was fraud." "Oh, stop," she laughed, a tinkling nervous sound. "You are so dramatic. Look, Grant is really sorry. He is just under a lot of pressure. He loves you. We both do. What do you want, Paige?" I asked, cutting through the syrup. "We were talking," she said, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "And we realized we really want you to be a part of the wedding. We haven't set a date yet, but we want you to be a bridesmaid, maybe even maid of honor. We want to mend fences." I said nothing. I let the silence stretch, and she continued, rushing to fill the gap. "We were thinking, since you are community, maybe we could work out a private arrangement. The bank is being sticky about the bridge loan. If you could just loan us, say $20,000 just for 3 months, we would pay you interest better than the bank, and then you know everything is smooth and we are all happy at the wedding." It was almost impressive, the sheer naked transactional nature of it. She was offering me a spot in a wedding party for a marriage that was doomed to fail in exchange for $20,000. She was selling me a ticket to a sinking ship. "Paige," I said, "I am going to say this once. I will not give you money. I will not lend you money. I will not co-sign for money." "But Piper," she whined, the sweetness evaporating. "If we lose the house, we have to move back to an apartment. It will be humiliating. Grant can't handle that. Do you want him to be depressed?" "I don't care," I said. "How can you be so selfish?" she snapped. "You have so much. You wouldn't even miss it." "I earned it," I said. "And I am keeping it." "You are going to regret this," she said, her voice turning hard. "When we are on top, when Grant's ship comes in, you are going to be begging to be let back in. And we won't let you. You will be all alone." "I like being alone," I said. "It is quiet and it is cheap." I hung up on her too. The fallout continued for the next 2 days. My phone became a battlefield. Aunt Linda sent me a long rambling neighborhood app message about the importance of forgiveness and how the board watches those who hoard wealth. Uncle Bob left a voicemail saying I was a disgrace for upsetting the president. It seemed that, in the Willow Creek mythology, the person who pointed out the fire was more hated than the person holding the matches. I felt like I was being gaslit on a massive scale. Was I the crazy one? Was I cruel? Was it wrong to have money and not give it to a president who was crying? I drove to a coffee shop just to get out of the house. I sat in the corner staring at my laptop trying to work. My phone buzzed. I flinched. It was Callie. "Hey, Aunt Linda just called me. She said you are the devil incarnate." I told her to go kick rocks. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in days. I called her. Hey yourself," Callie said. You holding up? Barely, I admitted. They are relentless.
Gal.
They are coming at me from all sides. Karen is guilt-tripping me about being a bad resident. Grant is threatening me. Paige is trying to bribe me with a bridesmaid dress I would probably have to pay for myself. Callie laughed. Oh, you definitely would have to pay for it, and it would be hideous. Am I wrong? I asked. The question came out small and fragile. Callie, tell me the truth. Am I wrong? Should I help her? There was a pause on the line. Then Callie spoke, her voice fierce and low. Piper, listen to me. You are not wrong. You are the only sane person in the asylum. She is going to lose everything. I said the house, her retirement, everything. She already lost it, Callie said. She lost it the minute she signed those papers. If you give them money now, you are not saving her. You are just lighting your own money on fire to keep them warm for another month. Grant is a black hole. He will eat until there is nothing left. If you jump in, he will eat you too. It feels awful, I whispered. It feels awful because you are a human being, Callie said. But you do not owe them your survival. You paid your dues, Piper. You paid them in missed meals and secondhand compliance and nights sleeping in a gym. You do not owe anyone your sacrifice. Not anymore. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me, Callie said. Just promise me one thing. What? Block them, she said. All of them. Karen, Grant, Paige, Linda. Block them on everything. Phone, email, neighborhood app. Cut the cord. If you keep listening to them, they will wear you down. They are vampires, Piper. They don't stop feeding until the host is dead. I can't just block the president, I said weakly. Yes, you can, Callie said. You have to for your own sanity. If there is a real emergency, like a hospital visit, I will call you. I will be the filter. But you need to build a wall. I looked out the window of the coffee shop. I saw a woman walking a dog that looked like Milo. She looked happy, unburdened. I looked at my phone. I looked at the log of missed calls and text messages. The vitriol, the manipulation, the demands. Callie was right. They weren't community. They were creditors calling to collect a debt I didn't owe. Okay, I said. I will do it. Good girl, Callie said. Go be free, Piper. You earned it. I hung up. I didn't hesitate this time. I opened my contacts. I found Karen. I scrolled down to the bottom. I hit block caller. I found Grant. Block caller. I found the number Paige had called from. Block caller. I went to the neighborhood app. I blocked Aunt Linda. I blocked Uncle Bob. I blocked my cousins. With every tap of my finger, the knot in my chest loosened a little more. It was a physical sensation, like taking off a corset that had been laced too tight for 20 years. I was severing the limb to save the body. I sat there for a long time, looking at the screen. It was done. The silence was absolute now, but it wasn't the silence of waiting for a storm. It was the silence of a vault door clicking shut. I was safe. I was alone. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to exist. But as I packed up my laptop, I knew that silence can be deceiving. I had blocked the noise, but I hadn't stopped the machinations. Grant was cornered. Karen was desperate. And people like that don't just fade away because you stopped answering their texts. They get creative and usually they get dangerous. I walked out to my car, checking the locks twice. I had closed the digital door, but I had a sinking feeling that the next knock wouldn't be on my phone. It would be at my front gate or worse, in my mailbox. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, buried between a catalog for winter coats and a flyer for a gutter cleaning service. It looked innocent enough. It was a standard white business envelope with a cellophane window, the kind that usually holds a privacy notice or a change of terms update. But when I picked it up, I felt a strange cold prickle at the base of my neck. The return address was for a collection agency called West Creek Recovery Services. I stood by my mailbox at the end of the driveway, my breath puffing out in white clouds against the frigid December air. The snow was falling softly, muffling the world, but the silence inside my head was shattered. I had blocked their numbers. I had blocked their emails. I had built a digital fortress. But paper has a way of slipping through the cracks. I walked back into the house, Milo trotting at my heels. I sat down at the kitchen island and used a knife to slit the envelope open. I did not rip it. I sliced it. Precision is a habit you do not break just because you are terrified. I unfolded the letter. It was a notice of default and intent to sue. Dear Miss Richardson, this letter serves as a final notice regarding the outstanding balance on your account ending in 4492. I stopped reading. My heart was hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I did not have an account ending in 4492. I knew every single one of my account numbers by heart. I tracked every penny. I had an 820 credit score. I did not have defaults. I looked at the amount. $7,842.16. I looked at the creditor. Quick Cash Advance Solutions. I went to my office and booted up my computer. My hands were steady, but my stomach was roiling. I logged into the Master Credit Bureau database, the one that showed the deep history, the archives that went back further than the standard consumer reports. I typed in the creditor's name. I cross-referenced it with my social security number. There it was. It was not a new account. That was the first shock. Grant's attempt to use my name for the house had been a new inquiry, a fresh wound. This was an old scar I had never noticed because it had been festering under the surface. The account had been open 9 years ago. I did the math. 9 years ago, I was 20. I was a sophomore in college. I was working 2 jobs. I was eating protein bars and sleeping 4 hours a night. I had never taken out a loan from a place like Quick Cash. I didn't even know what that was. I clicked on the account details. The address on file for the original application was not my college apartment. It was 402 Maple Street, Karen's old address in the older section. I stared at the screen. The blue light reflected in my eyes, cold and unblinking. The loan had been taken out for $5,000. It had been paid on sporadically for years' minimum payments. Just enough to keep it from going to collections. Just enough to keep it off the radar. But the payments had stopped 3 months ago. 3 months ago was exactly when Grant started looking for a house. 3 months ago was when the money ran out. I printed the document. Then I dug deeper. I pulled the original digital signature on the promissory note. It was a sloppy electronic signature, just a typed name and a checked box. Piper Richardson. But the IP address stamped on the digital application traced back to a local internet provider in Willow Creek. I sat back in my chair. The pieces were rearranging themselves in my mind, forming a picture so ugly I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Grant had not just tried to steal my identity last week. Someone had been using my identity for nearly a decade. But Grant was 25 back then. He was living in a different city, trying to be a DJ. He wasn't at Karen's house. I picked up my phone. I unblocked Callie's number. I dialed. She picked up on the first ring. Piper, is everything okay? Did they show up? No, I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. Callie, I need you to think back 9 years ago, the summer I turned 20. What was happening with Grant? Grant. Callie hesitated. God, that is a long time ago. Why? Just tell me, I said. Was he in trouble? Grant is always in trouble, Callie said dryly. Then she paused. Wait, that was the summer he got arrested. Don't you remember? He got a DUI in Kansas City. He hit a parked car. It was a whole thing. He needed a lawyer and there were fines. It was messy. How much? I asked. I don't know the exact number, Callie said. But it was thousands. Karen was hysterical. She said he was going to go to jail. She was running around the neighborhood trying to sell her jewelry. She didn't sell her jewelry, I whispered. What? She didn't sell it, I said, looking at the screen. She took out a loan, a high-interest predatory loan. Well, yeah, Callie said. That sounds like her. She would do anything to keep her golden boy out of cuffs. Callie, I said, closing my eyes. She took it out in my name. The line went dead silent. What did you say? Callie asked, her voice dropping. I am looking at the default notice right now, I said. $5,000 opened 9 years ago in my name using her address. She paid the minimums for years to hide it from me. She kept it buried. But when she drained her accounts for Grant's house down payment this year, she must have stopped paying this one. Now they are suing me. Oh my God, Callie breathed. That, Piper, that is evil. It is not just Grant, I said. The realization felt like a physical blow to the chest, cracking my sternum. I thought it was just Grant. I thought Karen was the victim. I thought she was just weak. I thought she was being manipulated. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to vomit. But she wasn't just a victim, Callie. She was an accomplice. She stole my credit when I was barely out of my teens. She knew I was struggling. She knew I was selling my dad's necklace to pay fines. And at the exact same time, she was using my social security number to bail Grant out of a DUI. She chose him, Callie said softly. She sacrificed you to save him again. Yes, I said. She did. The pain I had felt at the potluck was hot, a fiery anger. This pain was different. This was cold. Absolute zero. It froze everything inside me. The last lingering hope that Karen cared about the community, that she was just misguided or overwhelmed, shattered like glass dropped on concrete. You do not commit felony fraud against someone you love. You do not strap a debt anchor to your resident's back so your son can float. What are you going to do? Callie asked. I'm going to finish it, I said. Piper, be careful, Callie warned. They are desperate. If you corner them, I am not cornering them, I said. I am evicting them from my life permanently. I hung up. I spent the next 4 hours in a trance of productivity. I did not cry. I did not rage. I worked. Step 1. I filed a police report with the Willow Creek Sheriff's Department via their online portal. Identity theft, forgery, fraud. I listed Karen Thompson as the suspect. I attached the loan documents. I attached the IP trace. Step 2. I filled out an affidavit of forgery for the collection agency. I wrote a cease and desist letter citing the police report number. I stated clearly that this debt was not mine, that it was the result of criminal activity, and that I would sue them if they touched my credit score. Step 3. I placed a total lock on my social security number with the government. Not just a freeze, a lock. Nobody, not even me, could open a new account without a biometric verification and a trip to a federal office. Then I built the timeline. I opened a new spreadsheet. I labeled the columns. Date, event, amount, Piper's location, Grant's crisis. June 2014. Piper sells dad's necklace for $200. Grant gets a DUI. Karen opens a $5,000 loan in Piper's name. August 2016. Piper graduates with honors. Grant starts a business that fails. Karen refinances her house. November 2023. Piper buys a home. Grant moves in with Paige. Karen stops paying the secret loan. November 2025. Grant buys the big house. Karen drains her retirement. Grant tries to use Piper's credit again. It was a map of parasitism. Clear, data-driven visualization of how one resident was consumed to feed the other. I printed it out on heavy cardstock. I put it in a fresh manila envelope. Then I looked at the calendar. December 24th, the annual Willow Creek HOA Christmas Eve gathering. It was mandatory. It was the one night where appearances were upheld at all costs. It was taking place at Karen's house in the older section, the scene of the crime. I had blocked them. Yes, but a block is a shield. I needed a sword. I needed to deliver these papers. I could have mailed them. I could have sent a process server, but a process server would just be a stranger handing over an envelope. They needed to see me. They needed to look in my eyes when I handed them the consequences of their actions. They needed to understand that the resident they thought was a resource was actually a reckoning. I booked a flight across town for the morning of the 24th. I rented a car. Callie texted me later that night. "Are you sure about this? You can just let the lawyers handle it." I typed back, "Lawyers argue about money. This isn't about money anymore." I packed a small bag. I packed the envelope. I packed a black dress that looked like something you would wear to a funeral. I stood in front of the mirror in my hallway. The woman staring back at me didn't look like the blurry girl in the community photos anymore. She looked sharp. She looked dangerous. She looked like someone who had survived a winter that killed everyone else. I had spent my whole life trying to prove I was worthy of being in the frame. I had tried to be good enough, compliant enough, successful enough to earn Karen's gaze. Now I realized the truth. I had always been in the frame. I was just the support beam they were sawing through to build Grant's pedestal. I went to the safe in my closet. I took out my passport and my birth certificate, the only documents of mine Karen didn't have access to. I put them in my bag. I walked through my house, turning off the lights one by one. The darkness felt protective. I sat on the couch with Milo, stroking his fur. "I have to go away for a day, buddy," I whispered. "But when I come back, it will be just us forever." The letter from the collection agency sat on the counter. It was no longer a threat. It was a key. It was the missing piece of data that solved the equation. Why was Karen always broke despite working full-time? Why did she always side with Grant? Why did she never help newer residents? Answer: because she had leveraged her entire moral and financial existence on a bet that Grant would one day be rich. And to keep that bet alive, she had stolen my future to pay for his mistakes. She had gambled with chips that didn't belong to her. And now the house was calling the bet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed rehearsing the words. Not a speech, not a scream, just the facts. I wasn't going to Karen's house to get an apology. I wasn't going to get one. I wasn't going to get my money back. That was gone. I was going to get my name back. I closed my eyes and saw the snow falling on the runway. I saw the rental car driving down the familiar streets. I saw the wreath on Karen's door. I would knock. They would open it expecting a prodigal resident returning to beg for forgiveness or maybe a checkbook coming to the rescue. Instead, they were going to get the one thing they had spent a lifetime avoiding: accountability. I didn't come to win an argument. I came to end the game. The air in Karen's living room was thick enough to choke on. It smelled of cinnamon candles and impending doom. The Christmas tree was lit, casting a warm, deceptive glow over a scene that was anything but festive. I stood near the fireplace, my black dress stark against the festive red and green clutter. I had not taken off my coat. I was not staying long enough to get comfortable. Karen was sitting on the beige sofa, clutching a tissue. She looked 10 years older than she had at the potluck. The stress of the last month, the bank calls, the threats of foreclosure, the crumbling of Grant's house of cards had etched deep lines into her face. Grant was pacing by the window, vibrating with a manic energy. Paige was sitting next to Karen, holding her hand, performing the role of the supportive future daughter-in-law with Oscar-worthy dedication. Callie was standing in the doorway to the kitchen, arms crossed, watching me. She was my backup, my witness, and the only person in the room who knew what was in the manila envelope I was holding. "Piper," Karen said, breaking the silence. Her voice was a ragged whisper. I am so glad you came. I knew you would come. I knew you wouldn't leave the community like this. I am here, Karen, I said, but I think you are confused about why. We are a community, she said, looking up at me with watery, pleading eyes. Communities fight, but they fix things. Grant is in real trouble. Piper, the bank is talking about foreclosing before he even makes the first payment. They found out about the bridge loan. They are saying it is fraud. It is fraud, I said. They are going to take the house, she sobbed. And they are going to come after me. I will lose this place. I will lose my pension. You are the only one who can help. Piper, you are the only one with the resources to make this go away. Please, just this once, save us. Grant stopped pacing. He turned to me, his eyes desperate, but still arrogant. Look, Piper, I know we said some harsh things, but this is serious. If you can just float us the cash to clear the bridge loan, I can refinance in 6 months. I have a deal closing in February. I will pay you back with interest. 20%. I swear. 20%. I repeated. That is generous. Considering you haven't paid back the $5,000 you borrowed from me in 2014. Grant blinked. I never borrowed $5,000 from you. No, I said. You didn't. Karen did. I walked over to the coffee table. I pushed aside a decorative bowl of peppermints and placed the envelope down. I opened it. I did not throw the papers. I laid them out with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. First the police report, then the affidavit of forgery, then the timeline spreadsheet, and finally the copy of the original loan application from 9 years ago. What is this? Paige asked, leaning forward, her brow furrowed. This, I said, pointing to the yellowed copy of the loan document, is a loan for $5,000 taken out in my name from Quick Cash Advance Solutions. The date is June 12, 2014. I looked at Grant. Does that date ring a bell? Grant frowned. No. Why would it? That was the week you got your DUI in Kansas City, I said. The week you hit a parked car and needed $5,000 for a lawyer and fines to stay out of jail. Grant's face went slack. He looked at Karen. I was 20 years old, I continued, my voice steady and cold. I was living on ramen and working 2 jobs. I had sold Dad's necklace just to pay my rent. I didn't have $5,000, but Karen needed $5,000. So she used my social security number, which she had in her files, and she opened a high-interest loan in my name. She signed it digitally. She used this address. The room went deadly silent. The only sound was the crackle of the fire. Karen paid the minimums on it for 9 years, I said. She kept it hidden. She kept it off my radar. But when she drained her accounts to pay for your down payment last month, she stopped paying this loan. And because it is in my name, the collection agency came for me. Karen, Grant whispered. He looked at her with genuine shock. Not because she had stolen from me, but because he realized exactly how far she had gone to protect him. Karen was staring at the floor, tears streaming down her face. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. The IP address report was right there on the table. You stole my identity, I said to her. You committed a felony. You risked my future, my credit, my ability to ever rent an apartment or get a job just to keep Grant out of consequences. I had to, Karen wailed, the sound tearing out of her throat. He was going to go to prison. He was just a boy. He made a mistake. I couldn't let his life be ruined. So you ruined mine instead, I asked. You were strong, she cried. You were always so strong, Piper. I knew you could handle it if things went wrong. But Grant is sensitive. He needs help. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could pay it off before you ever knew. But you didn't, I said. You prioritized him always. You cannibalized your resident to feed your son. That is not true, Paige interjected, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. She loves the community. No, Paige, I said. Love protects. This isn't protection. This is predation. I pointed to the papers on the table. This is a police report, I announced. I filed it yesterday. Identity theft. Fraud. Forgery. Karen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Did you call the police on your own president? I called the police on the person who stole my identity, I corrected. I have also filed a formal dispute with the credit bureaus. I have flagged the account as fraudulent. I have provided them with the proof that I did not sign this loan. But if you do that, Karen stammered, her face draining of color, they will come after me. The collection agency will sue me. The police will investigate me. Yes, I said. They will. Piper, Grant shouted. Are you insane? You are going to send Karen to jail over $5,000. It is not about the money, Grant, I said, turning on him. It is about the fact that she did it. And it is about the fact that 2 days ago, you tried to do the exact same thing with the mortgage application. You learned it from her. You both think I am just a resource, a line of credit with a heartbeat. We are community, Grant screamed. You don't destroy community. You destroyed it, I said. 9 years ago. I am just signing the death certificate. I can't go to jail, Karen sobbed, rocking back and forth. I am an old woman, Piper. Please just pay it. Please, I will do anything. I will sell the house. You can't sell the house, Karen, I said. You already leveraged it for the bridge loan. You have no equity left. You have nothing because of you. Grant, I yelled. If you had just helped us, none of this would be happening. No, I said. If I had helped you, I would be broke too, and you would still be a bottomless pit. I took a step back. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The secret was out. The burden I hadn't even known I was carrying, the confusion about why I never felt valued, was gone. It wasn't me. It was never me. It was the simple, brutal economics of favoritism. Here is what is going to happen, I said. I have placed a total lock on my credit. You cannot use my name again. I have reported the fraud. The law will take its course. I am not giving you money for the house. Grant, you are going to lose it. You are going to have to move out. You are going to have to get a job. Grant looked like he wanted to hit me, but he stayed where he was, paralyzed by the sudden removal of his safety net. And Karen, I said, I suggest you use whatever money you have left to hire a criminal defense attorney. You are going to need one to explain why you signed my name on a promissory note. You are a monster, Karen whispered. I gave you a home, and then you tried to sell it, I replied. I turned away from them. I walked over to Callie. She was crying silently, tears of anger and relief running down her face. Callie, I said. Here. I reached into my purse and pulled out a different envelope. This one was white and crisp. What is this? Callie asked, wiping her eyes. Open it later, I said. It is a cashier's check. $50,000. The room gasped. Grant's eyes bulged. What? Grant choked out. You have $50,000. You have it right there. Yes, I said. I do. And you are giving it to her. Grant screamed, pointing at Callie. She is a cousin. I am your neighbor. Callie was there, I said, my voice rising for the first time. Callie was there when I had the flu. Callie was there when I graduated. Callie was the only one who didn't ask me for a dime. She is the only community I have. I looked at Callie. Use it for a down payment on that condo you wanted or start your design business. I don't care. It is yours. No strings. No repayment. Piper, Callie sobbed, clutching the envelope. I can't take this. You can, I said. And you will, because you are the only one in this room who knows what loyalty actually means. I turned back to Grant and Karen. They were staring at the envelope in Callie's hand with a mixture of greed and hatred that made my skin crawl. You are so selfish, Grant hissed. You are a selfish, vindictive. You would rather give money to a cousin than save your own president. I looked him dead in the eye. I wanted to remember this moment. I wanted to remember exactly how ugly he looked when he didn't get his way. Selfish, I said slowly, tasting the word. You keep using that word, but I don't think you know what it means. I adjusted my coat. Selfish is forcing the quiet resident to sacrifice her life to cover the sins of the child you spoiled. Selfish is stealing my name to save his reputation. Selfish is thinking you are entitled to my sweat and my blood just because we share an HOA. I walked to the door. I am not selfish, Grant. I am free. I opened the door. The cold winter air rushed in, cleansing the room of the scent of cinnamon and lies. Goodbye, I said. Don't call me. I won't answer. I walked out into the snow. I heard Karen wailing behind me. A high, keen sound of regret that came 10 years too late. I heard Grant shouting, but the sounds were muffled by the falling snow. I got into my rental car. Callie ran out after me, clutching the envelope to her chest. Piper, she called out. Are you okay? I rolled down the window. The cold air felt good on my face. I am great, Cal, I said. I am really great. Thank you, she said, holding up the envelope. You changed my life. You saved mine, I said. Go build something real. I drove away. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look at the window where the Christmas tree was twinkling. That life was a movie set and the production had finally been shut down. I drove back to my section that night. When I walked into my house, it was quiet, but it wasn't empty. Milo was there wagging his tail, his paws clicking on the hardwood floors that I owned. I sat down on my couch. I didn't have a mortgage fraud investigation hanging over me. I didn't have a predatory loan in my name anymore. I didn't have a president who viewed me as an ATM. I had my dog. I had my peace. And I had the absolute unshakable knowledge that I had finally truly settled down. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe relaxing at home like I am with Milo? Please let me know in the comments below. I really enjoy reading your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the story, please make sure to subscribe to the channel HOA Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button so more people can hear the truth about toxic HOAs. Stay strong and remember, you don't owe anyone your peace.